The sun beat down with merciless intensity over the cracked, ochre earth of Bairavgar. Waves of heat shimmered off the parched grass, turning the horizon into a wavering mirage. The thorns, the stones, the bleached bones of animals long gone, everything spoke of survival. But only just. This was a land that remembered droughts more than rain. In this harsh place, far from the gaze of most humans, moved a creature few ever saw and fewer still lived to describe. He was called Solo, a black panther, technically a melanistic leopard, but to those who whispered of him in the nearby villages, he was something else entirely. A ghost, a curse, a god in exile. For Solo, such titles meant nothing. He had no name for himself. Only hunger, thirst, and an endless vigilance shaped his world. He was sleek muscle and midnight fur, gliding through the thickets like smoke. He did not belong to a clan, a pride, or even a mate. He belonged to the silence. Solo had lived alone for as long as he could remember. The forest reserve at the edge of the Bairavgar grasslands was where he had grown. Hunted and watched. His mother had vanished when he was young, perhaps poached, perhaps driven off. No one taught him how to fight for territory or find a mate. What he learned from hunger. His life was a long litany of caution: avoid men, avoid machines, hunt at dusk, vanish by dawn. But today, the sun was too hot, and the hunger too sharp. The waterhole had dried to a muddy stain. His last kill had been 2 days ago, a sickly chinkara. Barely enough to fill him. Now he roamed the fringes of his territory, driven not by instinct, but by something harder to name. Something like longing. It started with the smell, smoke. Not of the usual forest kind, but sharper, wood and spice, and the faint, acrid bite of burning plastic. Then the sound, high, fast human voices carried on the wind. Solo had always avoided those voices. But today, they stirred something in him. Curiosity. Or perhaps desperation. He followed the scent trail as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the plains. He crossed the dirt road, a danger zone he usually avoided, and slinked through a line of low thorn bushes. On the other side, he saw it, Rampur. The village was small, no more than 30 or 40 structures clustered like sun-bleached bones. The walls were mostly mud brick, roofs flat and patched with blue tarps or corrugated iron. There were goats and chickens and dust everywhere. A well stood in the center. Women pulling up water and chatting. Their voices musical and quick. A motorcycle rattled past, spitting exhaust. Solo froze at the edge, half hidden by scrub. This was too close, too exposed. But the smell, meat, raw and spiced, cooking over flame, made his stomach twist painfully. A child saw him first. A thin boy in a red shirt, balancing a bucket of water. He froze mid-step, staring. Then, the scream. It was high and terrified and immediate. Within seconds, the air filled with shouts. Barg, barg, panther. The word crackled through the village like lightning. Doors slammed, pots clattered to the ground. The motorcycle skidded to a stop. Solo hesitated. The old him would have bolted, vanished into the tall grass like a bad dream. But something anchored him, a strange stillness. He did not want to run. Not this time. A stone flew and hit the dirt near his paw. Another followed, striking his shoulder. He hissed low. His muscles coiled. A man came into view, wielding a bamboo stick, shouting and waving it overhead. More villages joined in, a half-circle of fear and noise and violence. Solo's heart pounded, not from fear, but from rage. Not because they could hurt him, they could. Yes, but because he felt, in that moment, seen, fully seen, and hated for it. He turned and bolted, not into the open plains, but deeper into the village. It was a mistake. He darted between huts, leaping over low fences, his claws clacking against hard-packed dirt. Chickens scattered. A goat bleated in panic. He passed a clothesline, knocking saris into the dust. The shouts followed him like fire. Then he found the well again, the heart of Rampur, and skidded to a stop. A woman stood there, frozen, a metal pot in her hands. Her eyes locked with his. She didn't scream. Solo stared back, chest heaving. For a brief moment, something passed between them. Not fear, not pity, just recognition. He was not supposed to be here. And neither, it seemed, was she. Then the stick came, hard and fast from behind. It cracked against his flank, sending white pain through his ribs. He roared, not in warning, but in fury, and leapt sideways, catching the man's arm with his claws. Blood sprayed. The chaos exploded. More screams. Men retreated. Someone fired a shot into the air. Solo sprinted again, this time toward the fields beyond the last row of huts. His lungs burned. His ribs throbbed. But he ran with every fiber of his being. Not just away from the pain, but away from the eyes. Those eyes that made him feel like a monster. By the time he reached the edge of Rampur, the sun had dipped below the horizon. Shadows grew longer. The cool of night began to creep in. Solo collapsed behind a large boulder, panting. His black coat was smeared with dust. His side wet with blood. He licked the wound slowly. It wasn't deep. He'd live. But something had changed. For years, he had believed his life was meant to be unseen, untouched by the world of men. Yet for a moment, brief and terrible, he had stepped into it. And it had reacted with fear and violence, as he expected. But also, with awareness. He had been more than a shadow. He had been real. Solo lay in the darkness, listening to the village behind him settle again. The shouts faded. A baby cried. A dog barked and then was silent. Somewhere, a door creaked. The woman at the well, her eyes still haunted him. There was no terror in them. No hatred, just knowing, as if she too had wandered where she shouldn't have. Once, the hunger was still there, but beneath it now stirred something older, something deeper, a question, perhaps. What if he didn't return to the reserve? What if he didn't want to survive on silence anymore? Solo closed his eyes as the stars emerged overhead, sharp and bright over Bairavgarh. He would rest, heal, wait, and then, when the time came, he would decide whether to vanish again, or be seen. The night in Bairavgar was not silent. Rampur village echoed with the clamor of fear. Pots clanged, whistles shrieked, and angry shouts split the stillness. A mob armed with sticks, torches, and kitchen tools surged across the outer fields, scattering dust into the dark. They chased a shadow, a blur of black muscle and panic, through crops and cow trails. Desperate to drive it out, Solo ran. His paws hit dry earth and brittle stalks. His breath came in ragged bursts. Pain flared in his side where a stick had struck him earlier. The wound throbbed. His ribs ached from the blow. And his mind was spiraling with terror. He was fast, yes, but fear was faster. It clawed into his chest, blinding him to the terrain, to the smells, to the slope of the earth ahead. Then, ground vanished beneath him. His hind legs slipped on something slick. He twisted, claws scrambling for grip, but it was too late. The earth gave way. The world flipped. He plummeted into darkness. Thud. Then squelch. Then stillness. Solo lay motionless, stunned, as the cold oozed around his limbs. The scent hit him next: mud, stale water, rot. He had fallen into something ancient and forgotten. A pit, a hollow earth belly that had once been a well, maybe, or a borehole abandoned by time. His breathing was shallow. Muck clung to his fur. One leg bent at an angle that shot pain up his flank when he tried to move. The fall hadn't broken anything, but it had hurt. His head swam. The sounds from above, men shouting, whistles blowing, were already fading. The mob had rushed past, not realizing where their quarry had vanished. Solo was alone again, but this solitude was different. It was not the kind he was used to, the kind he chose. This was entrapment. He stood knee-deep in thick mud at the bottom of a 6-meter hole. The pit was round, the walls sheer and slick with damp clay. The top was a jagged circle of starlight far above. Unreachable. Around him, the only company was the echo of his own breath and the occasional drip of water from somewhere above. He tried to leap. His muscles coiled, released, but the mud sucked at him like a trap. He landed with a splash, sending cold spray into his face. Again, he tried, and again, he failed. Each attempt cost more energy. Each failure chipped away a little more resolve. Eventually, Solo collapsed, panting, sinking slightly into the wet. The cold crept into his bones. The wind didn't reach this far down. The air was damp, heavy. He licked his injured leg, but it tasted of mud and old water. His body trembled from more than just pain. He was used to silence, but not this kind. This silence had weight. It pressed on him from all sides. Above him, the stars looked like distant eyes. Unreachable, indifferent. No one knew he was here. No one was coming. Solo had never longed for others. Never trusted another living soul. But now, in this place, in this pit of muck and darkness, something in him cracked, a sliver of something sharp and invisible. Not quite fear, not quite pain, but despair. He let out a soft, low growl, not a warning, not a roar, just a sound, a sound to remind himself he still existed. Then he curled into himself, tail wrapping around his injured leg, and waited. The night dragged. Time warped in that pit. Hours passed without movement. The mud clung like hands. Flies buzzed unseen. A frog croaked once and then went quiet. The stars shifted slightly, inching across the circular frame of sky above. Solo shivered. His body was strong, but strength meant little here. He was not a predator in this place. He was just a creature in a hole, trapped by his own fear, driven by the madness of men. He thought of the woman at the well, the one who didn't scream. Why hadn't she run like the others? He didn't know. He only remembered her eyes. There was something in them he couldn't name. Something he hadn't felt in years. Recognition, maybe, like they both belonged nowhere. His breathing slowed. He drifted between sleep and waking, each moment a battle to keep his head above the mud. His limbs ached. Hunger gnawed at him, but deeper still was thirst. The foul water at the bottom of the pit was unfit to drink. But he had no choice. He lapped at it, gagged, then stopped. Better to die thirsty than poisoned. And yet, he didn't want to die. Not here, not like this, not as just a shadow. Hours passed. Then, the first light. It was faint, barely a whisper of gold at the lip of the pit. Dawn breaking over Bairavgar. The wind shifted above. Somewhere distant, a rooster crowed. Solo raised his head, ears twitching. He tried again to rise. His legs wobbled. The mud clung tight, but he stood. Because he had to. Because something deep inside him, something primal and raw, refused to go out like this. And then, he heard it. A sound. Not the wind. Not an animal. A voice. A child's voice. Faint. Curious. Calling to someone. Solo didn't move. The voice grew louder. A shadow passed over the rim of the pit. A boy, maybe 7, maybe 10, peered down. His eyes went wide. He shouted something. Footsteps rushed away. Then silence again. But not the same silence. This one held possibility. Hope. Solo waited. Still as stone. Time passed. Then, more shadows. Adults now. Multiple. A flashlight beam pierced the darkness, landing on his face. Gasps followed. Murmurs. Arguments. A rope dropped. Not to rescue, but to check. Solo didn't move. Eventually, someone shouted a decision. They would come back. They would get the forest department. Solo did not know what that meant. He only knew this. The world above had seen him. Not as myth, not as monster, but as a living, breathing creature, wounded, trapped, and waiting. And maybe, just maybe, someone would care enough to act. The pit of despair didn't feel as deep now. Because light had touched it. And that changed everything. The first light of dawn washed over Rampur in soft gold. The dry grass shimmered with dew. Birds stirred. Somewhere, a goat bleated, breaking the hush of early morning. 4 young men trudged along a narrow dirt path cutting through the edge of the rice fields. They carried tools, sickles, ropes. A plastic water bottle passed between them, and walked with the ease of routine. Harvest season was weeks away. But the fields needed checking for damage. Wild boars had been rooting around lately. And after the panic last night, they wanted to see if the creature, the Black Shadow, was still around. Arjeet led the group, tall and wiry, his shirt half unbuttoned and stained from yesterday's work. Behind him walked Ramesh, silent and serious. Vikram followed, cracking jokes about ghosts and demons. And at the rear was Dev, who walked with a slight limp, a relic of a bike accident a year ago. Dev had once volunteered at the wildlife reserve near Bairavgarh. Of the four, he spoke the least, but when he did, people listened. They were halfway past the old abandoned well, now a forgotten crater overgrown with dry weeds. When Arjeet suddenly stopped. "Wait, you hear that?" The others paused. Nothing at first, just wind. Then, faint but clear, a rustling, a low, ragged breath. They approached the edge, curious. What they saw froze them in place. At the bottom of the pit lay the Black Panther, motionless, but not dead. Dev was the first to speak. "It's the same one, from last night." "Holy shit," Vikram whispered. "It's still alive." Solo lay curled in the mud, his body caked in filth. One leg twisted awkwardly beneath him. His sides rose and fell with labored breaths. He didn't move, his eyes were barely open. But he was alive. Arjeet stepped back. "We should go. It'll kill us if it gets out." "No," Dev said quietly. "Look at it. He's not attacking anyone. He's done. He's too weak." Ramesh swallowed hard. "So what? We just leave it, let it die in there?" Vikram frowned. "It's a wild animal, not a dog." Dev's voice rose, firm now. "It's not just a wild animal. It's hurt, it's scared, and it's trapped. If we leave it here, it dies. If we help, maybe it doesn't. I say we try." The others looked at him, uncertain. But Dev was already checking the rope in his bag. Something shifted in the air, an unspoken agreement. A shared understanding that this was no longer just about fear or danger. This was about who they were going to be in this moment. "All right," Arjeet muttered. "Let's do something crazy." They worked fast. Dev tied knots while Ramesh found a long wooden pole. Vikram scouted the perimeter for anything useful: sticks, bamboo, discarded tarps. Arjeet tested the rope's strength by wrapping it around his own body and leaning back hard. The ground here was dry and cracked. The pit was at least 5 meters deep. Solo didn't stir. "He's breathing, but shallow," Dev observed. "We don't have time." They tied the rope to a nearby tree trunk. Dev dropped the end down gently, careful not to hit Solo. Ramesh extended the pole, trying to hook it under the panther's front legs. It didn't work. "He's too heavy," Ramesh grunted. "Dead weight." "Let me try," Dev said. He stripped off his overshirt, looped the rope around his waist, and looked up. "Lower me in." "You're insane," Vikram said, eyes wide. "It's a panther. He's not going to hurt me." Dev replied. "He can't." They lowered him slowly. Mud squelched under his shoes as he touched the bottom. Solo stirred. Dev froze. The panther's eyes opened. Just a crack. Golden. Dull. Exhausted. but aware. Dev didn't move. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're okay." Solo didn't snarl, didn't growl, he only watched. Moving slowly, Dev crouched beside him, took the rope, and began looping it gently around Solo's front legs and chest. The panther flinched once, but didn't resist. He was too tired. Above, the others held their breath. "Got it," Dev called. "Pull, but slow." It took everything they had. 4 men, sweating, straining, faces clenched with effort. Mud pulled at Solo's body like a vice. Dev climbed beside him, bracing with his shoulder as they hauled together. Rope cut into palms. Muscles burned. The sun rose higher. Almost there, Arjeet shouted. Solo's body began to rise. Inch by inch, mud sucking at his hind legs. Resisting. "Don't stop," Dev yelled. With a final heave, the panther's upper body cleared the edge. Ramesh grabbed a forelimb. Vikram took the other. Arjeet grabbed the rope and pulled with all his strength. Then, with a heavy, wet thud, Solo collapsed onto solid ground. They all fell back, gasping, chests heaving. No one spoke. Solo didn't run. He lay still, chest rising and falling, eyes open. He looked at each of them, not with rage, not with fear, but something stranger, as if he, too, was unsure what had just happened. Ramesh broke the silence. "We actually did it." Dev wiped sweat from his brow. "Yeah, we did." Vikram laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound. "What now?" "We call the forest department. I already sent a message on the radio," Arjeet said. "They'll come." None of them moved closer. They didn't need to. Their job was done. Solo slowly lifted his head. His gaze met Dev's. There was no roaring, no aggression, just silence and understanding. Then, with a shaky step, Solo stood. He turned toward the open plains and walked away, not limping, not running, walking with dignity. The 4 men stood together, watching the black figure shrink against the rising sun, vanishing into the tall grass. Not as a shadow, but as something real, something saved. And in that moment, they knew this story would follow them forever. Not for the danger, not even for the bravery, but because in a world built on fear, they had chosen to act from something else. Something rarer, compassion. The Bhairavgarh Wildlife Rescue Center was a low, sturdy compound surrounded by scrubland and acacia trees. It wasn't flashy, just clean concrete walls, shaded pens, and the constant hum of generators, but it was a lifeline for the forgotten animals of central India. Injured langurs, abandoned cubs, birds with broken wings. This was where they came. And where, if luck held, they healed. It was here that Solo arrived. He came not as a ghost of the grasslands, not as the feared phantom of Rampur, but as a broken animal strapped to a stretcher, caked in mud, ribs visible under his black coat. 2 forest department trucks had escorted him under sedation, guarded as if he were a political prisoner, though he was barely conscious. The villagers gathered as he left. Phones raised, whispers flying about the beast, the fall, and the 4 young men who had pulled him from the pit. At the center, Dr. Mina stood waiting. She was a wiry woman in her early 40s. With a no-nonsense gait and a sharp voice that could cut through the buzz of a generator or the chatter of junior staff. She'd seen plenty in her years: a tiger mauled by poachers, a bear blinded by firecrackers, but the sight of Solo took her aback. "Panther," someone whispered. "No," Mina said, stepping forward. "Melanistic leopard." The team moved fast. IV lines, electrolyte fluids, wound cleaning, blood tests. One leg had a hairline fracture, but nothing surgical. His vitals were low, but stable. What worried her more was the near starvation and the psychological trauma. Solo was not just physically wounded, he was exhausted, wary, on the edge of giving up. "We've got a fighter here," Mina muttered, brushing a clump of dried mud from his fur. "Let's make sure he gets the chance." The first night was critical. Solo lay unmoving in a shaded enclosure lined with straw and canvas. A low fan whirred above. Cameras monitored his breathing. A sedative kept him still, but not unconscious. He woke in fragments, sudden, gasping moments of confusion, followed by darkness again. The second day, they adjusted his fluids. Nutrition paste was injected through a feeding tube. His fever broke. The third day, he opened his eyes fully and did not close them again. Mina was there when he first lifted his head. "He's alert," she said, smiling faintly. "That's our boy." Still, it was a slow climb. Solo didn't eat on his own for 2 days. He growled at every handler, tried to stand too soon and fell. But his instincts, though dulled by exhaustion, had not disappeared. When meat was left in the corner of his enclosure, raw, clean, fresh, he stared at it for nearly an hour. Then he ate, not in a frenzy, not like a wild thing, but with slow, deliberate bites. By the end of the week, he was walking again, limping, yes, but walking. Word began to spread beyond the village. A few photos leaked online: a muddy black panther, eyes burning with fatigue, 4 young men hoisting a rope beside a pit. Local journalists picked it up first: leopard rescue in Rampur, followed by regional outlets. Interviews followed. Arjit, Dev, Ramesh, and Vikram didn't care for the cameras. They hadn't done it for fame, but they gave the interviews anyway. Awkward in front of microphones. Their statements plain and honest. "We saw him down there. We couldn't leave him. Yeah, we were scared. But he wasn't attacking. He was just stuck. Dev said he could be saved. We trusted him." The headlines spun it in all directions. 4 heroes save panther. Rampur's brave sons. Man and beast. A moment of mercy. The forest department issued statements praising the villages. The rescue center received a wave of small donations. Children wrote letters. One girl's crayon drawing of Solo, huge eyes, crooked tail, was taped to the outside of his enclosure. Dr. Mina kept things in perspective. This is one animal, one story, but it matters. People need to remember that wild doesn't mean evil. Scared doesn't mean dangerous. And sometimes, the right thing to do is the hard thing. Solo didn't know the world was watching, but he felt the shift. He no longer braced every time someone approached the enclosure. He no longer curled away from the food tray. He tolerated the presence of Dr. Mina when she stood quietly outside the mesh fence, clipboard in hand. In the second week, he was moved to a larger pen, one with a tree, a pool of clean water, and a stretch of earth that reminded him, just barely, of the grasslands. He stretched more now. His coat was cleaner, sleek again. Once, a crow landed nearby, squawking. Solo didn't flinch. He watched it, then turned his head and dozed again. There was no more rage in him, only rest. Dr. Mina reviewed his final scans on day 18. No signs of internal damage. She told the staff, "Fractures healing well. He'll need more time, but he's strong." She paused at the edge of the enclosure that evening. Solo paced near the back, pausing to sniff a pile of fresh leaves someone had scattered. "You got lucky," she said aloud, though not expecting a response. "You could have died down there. But 4 humans decided not to let that happen. Remember that." Solo turned his head, just slightly, then walked on. In a few weeks, he would be released back into a protected corridor of the forest reserve. Far from Rampur, far from roads and villages. A place with water, prey, and the one thing he needed most, space. But for now, he had this, a second chance, not just to live, but to be understood. And somewhere out there, in Rampur, 4 young men would always remember the weight of his body on that rope. The look in his eyes as he emerged from the pit. And the moment they realized that saving something wild could change something human. 2. The morning was quiet as the transport truck rumbled through the narrow dirt road leading deep into the Bairavgarh Wildlife Reserve. The vehicle's suspension creaked under the weight of the steel crate it carried. Locked and reinforced but lined with straw, soft cloth, and one extraordinary passenger, Solo. He lay in the crate. Not sedated, not panicked, alert, still. His golden eyes scanned the world through the slats of the door as the light flickered through the canopy. This was not the disoriented panic of captivity. This was understanding. He was going home. A week had passed since his final checkup. His leg had strengthened. His appetite had returned. And most important of all, he had reclaimed a stillness in his body. Not fear, not aggression, but balance. The wildness was back in him. Not rage, not desperation, but instinct, strength. He was ready. At the edge of a grassy clearing, the truck came to a stop. Forest rangers in khaki uniforms stood nearby, clipboard in hand, murmuring final notes into walkie-talkies. The air was warm but soft. The kind of calm morning only wilderness could offer. Birds called overhead. Wind rustled the tall grasses that stretched into the tree line beyond. This section of Bairavgarh was far from villages, far from roads. It was part of a protected corridor where leopards could roam freely, marked only by camera traps and ranger patrols. No fences, no humans, just earth, sky, and the old rhythm of predator and prey. Dr. Mina stepped down from the passenger seat and walked to the back of the truck. Her face was tired but resolute. She gave the signal. The metal latch on the crate clicked. The door swung open. At first, nothing happened. Then a low, deliberate movement. Solo stepped forward. His muscles rippled under the sleek black coat. His eyes adjusted instantly to the light. He paused at the threshold. The wind pressing against his face. The smells hit him. Grass. Dust. Deer. Birds. 1,000 scents that screamed of life. Familiar. Free. He looked upward. The sky was vast. Then, he moved, a slow, fluid stride into the open. He didn't run at first, he walked. Unhurried. Each step measured like someone relearning a language they'd once known. He turned his head once toward the truck, just briefly, then set his sights forward. Then he ran, not from fear, not from pursuit, but with purpose, through the grass, into the trees, past the low bushes and rising thickets. He didn't look back again. From a small rise overlooking the clearing, 4 figures stood silently. Arjit, Dev, Ramesh, Vikram. They had been invited, personally. It was Dev who received the call. And the others didn't hesitate. They arrived early, stood apart from the rangers. Not in the way. They watched as Solo emerged. As he returned to the wild. And not one of them spoke a word. But their eyes told everything. Pride. Not the loud, boastful kind. The quiet kind. The kind that came from doing something that mattered. And knowing it had been right. Dev's lips curled into a small smile. He remembers. He said softly. Vikram folded his arms, eyes never leaving the spot where Solo had vanished into the brush. I hope he finds peace out there. He already has, said Arjit. He found it the moment we pulled him out. Ramesh added. They stayed for a while. Just standing there. No cameras. No reporters. No need to prove anything to anyone. This moment wasn't about them. It was about the creature they had saved, the symbol he had become. Solo had once been just a shadow. A myth whispered among villages. A threat. A mystery. But now, he was something more. He was proof that compassion could cross the wildest of divides. That fear didn't have to end in violence. That even a panther, alone and broken in a pit, could be given a second chance. And by extension, so could they all. Back in the reserve, Solo slowed his run. He reached a shaded patch of earth under a wide neem tree and crouched low. The sounds of the forest wrapped around him, squirrels chittering, leaves rustling, a woodpecker tapping somewhere above. He drank from a small, clear stream that cut through the ground like a silver ribbon. He raised his head, droplets glistening on his whiskers. Alone again, but not lonely. This place knew him, and now, somewhere out there, humans did too, not just as something to fear or hunt or drive away, but as something to respect, to protect, as a living being, as part of the world they shared. A soft breeze moved through the grass. Solo's ears twitched. He stood again, stretching, his black form nearly vanishing in the dappled shadows. He moved on, each step quiet, confident, free, and as he disappeared into the heart of Bhairavgarh, no longer just a ghost, but a symbol of hope. He left behind not just paw prints, but a bond, an invisible thread between the wild and the human world. A reminder that the line between them, though long and tangled, could still be crossed, not with force, but with courage and kindness.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.